Welcome. Trauma is my jam, and by that I mean I help you understand what's going on inside your body. Let's make sense of it together.
I'm here to tell you, friends, it is not always clear when we are living in survival mode. Sometimes survival mode looks completely normal, and oftentimes we're even praised for it. But it can be completely exhausting. Now listen, when people hear the term survival mode, they often think of somebody who is visibly anxious, panicked, or overwhelmed. But many of us have been living in survival mode for so long that it feels normal. And that's what makes it difficult for us to recognize sometimes. Because survival mode doesn't always look like crisis. I mean, don't get me wrong. When you're in crisis, you're normally living in survival mode. That's clear. But survival mode also looks like staying busy, taking care of everyone else, and never being able to fully relax. And because these behaviors are often things we're praised for by society, many people don't even realize that they're living in survival responses at all. At least I know I didn't. Now, survival mode is what happens when the nervous system believes that it needs to stay prepared. Prepared for danger, rejection, criticism, disappointment, uncertainty, emotional pain. And over time, that state can become familiar if we're in it often enough. And remember, the nervous system learns that staying alert, staying productive, staying responsible, staying focused on everyone else's needs feels way safer than slowing down. And not because you did anything wrong, but because your nervous system had to learn to adapt. Now, one of the biggest signs of survival mode in my own life is my inability to rest. From the moment I got up, I used to go until the moment I went to bed. I was constantly in motion. There was always something to do, laundry, a phone call, somewhere to go, or something productive that I could be doing and accomplishing. Sitting down during the day simply did not feel right at all, because surely there was something that needed my attention. And for years, I just thought that was who I was. I'm a getter. I'm a get up and go kind of person. And I go until it's time to go to bed and then I'm done. And I really thought I'm just super productive. I'm really driven and I'm very motivated. But looking back now, I can see how much of my life I have spent living in survival mode. My nervous system didn't know how to slow down. And in fact, one of the hardest lessons I learned from the brain injury was that rest was a part of recovery and a non-negotiable part of recovery. And listen, even though I knew that first injury that I had back in 2019, the doctor said to me, Pam, you need to rest. You have a mild concussion. I was like, absolutely, I can do that. Within the next couple days, I went on a 5-kilometer hike. I painted the upstairs hallway of my house, and I was constantly finding things to do because my body didn't know how to be still, at all. And even when I tried to be still, I couldn't do it. It was so super uncomfortable. So I got up and I did that painting and I went on that hike and I rearranged the kitchen cabinets. I just did what I normally did. And guess what? Within 5 days of my injury, I turned a mild concussion into a moderate concussion that literally took away my ability to speak and to actually physically move. And then I was back at the doctor's because I couldn't figure out how to rest. And now listen, I understand that resting was uncomfortable, and it wasn't because I felt like I was lazy. Resting was uncomfortable because my nervous system had learned to stay in motion. That if I'm in motion, I'm safer than if I'm resting. All right, I'm going to give you a second example of living in chronic survival mode that we don't often recognize. So, and this again is one for me. So I'm sharing from my own personal life here. Taking care of everyone else. This showed up through focusing on everyone else's needs. And for years, I was incredibly good at understanding everybody else. I could see their struggles, their intentions, their pain, their reasoning. But when it came to my own needs, well, oftentimes I couldn't even identify them. And when I did identify them, I certainly minimized them compared to everybody else's. Everybody else's feelings mattered more than mine. Everybody else's struggle deserved more attention. And again, I thought it was simply that I was like this super caring person. Because listen, caring for people is one of my superpowers. But eventually, I realized that focusing on everyone else was keeping me disconnected from myself. And listen, when I'm focused on everybody else and their needs and taking care of them, not only does that give me value as a person, but it allows me to not have to deal with some of the pain that I might be carrying. And so my nervous system learned that if I focus on everybody else's needs, it's safer for me than focusing on my own. So, what can you do if you recognize one of these survival responses in yourself? I'm going to give you a tool, and this is the tool that I use and I continue to use because listen, healing is not linear, it's a process, right? Up, down, around, circles back, here and there. I got to tell you, it's not that the work is never done, but there's always a little bit more of a piece to work through. So, here is the tool that I like to use. I call it awareness without action. Okay? So I want to be very clear. This exercise is not about changing behavior. Because here's the thing. Awareness interrupts the automatic cycle. And listen, all trauma responses are automatic. They happen as quick as a snap of a finger and before your thinking logical part of your brain even comes online. So what happens is your nervous system senses something and the alarm gets activated and the body automatically sends you to reach for a strategy that has worked before. And the entire process happens without a conscious thought because, again, that thinking part of your brain has been diminished. So when you notice one of these patterns, I want you to pause. Not to fix it, not to stop it, but just pause to give a moment to interrupt that automatic response. So let me give you an example. Say you finally have an opportunity to sit down and rest. And listen, you know you're tired. You know your body needs a break. But within a few minutes of sitting down, your mind starts racing and you begin thinking about all the things that you could be getting done in this moment instead of sitting down. Now you start to feel restless. You're starting to feel uncomfortable and you start looking for something productive that you can do. So instead of immediately getting up and doing something, you're going to pause. And then you're going to ask yourself, what is my nervous system preparing for right now? Or what about resting feels uncomfortable? Or what is my body afraid will happen if I choose to rest and slow down right now? Or maybe you're like me and you focus on everyone else's needs again. You're checking on everyone, you're solving everyone's problems, you're making sure everybody is okay. You catch yourself doing this, you're going to pause. And then you're going to ask yourself, am I avoiding anything with myself right now? Is there any of my own struggles that I'm avoiding acknowledging? Or what about focusing on them feels safer to me than focusing on myself? And now here, again, is the important part. This is not about changing the behavior. You might still get up and start cleaning. You might still start checking in with all your friends. This is not how we're going to measure success. The pause is success and the awareness is success. Because the moment you start interrupting that automatic response and become curious to understanding what that response is looking for, you, my friend, have already started creating the change. Now, survival mode, again, doesn't always look like panic. Sometimes it looks like staying busy, taking care of everybody else, struggling to rest, and disconnecting from your own needs. And because these behaviors are often rewarded in our society, that personally I think is ass backwards from what our natural bodies need, that's a sidebar for another day. Many people have no idea that they're living in survival responses. But see, awareness changes everything. Because once we understand what our nervous system is doing, we can begin working with it instead of against it. And that's where healing begins. All right, my friends, that is it for me today. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you have a great day.